It's a major breakthrough in sickle cell research. Two new gene-based treatments, both made by companies right here in Massachusetts, have been approved by the FDA. It's a long-awaited decision on a technology that won its inventors a Nobel Prize in 2020. Now, the blood disorder, according to the CDC, affects over 100,000 Americans, many of whom are black. But for many of those people, the prices for these new treatments are just out of reach, costing up to $3.1 million. So even though it's unaffordable for now, we want to ask, how will this change what we know about the disease? I'm joined now by Dr. Sharl Azar, Medical Director for Mass General's Comprehensive Sickle Cell Disease Treatment Center and the hospital's Robert K. Kraft Endowed Chair in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Alongside him is Carissa Juarez, a patient ambassador for the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association, whose 12-year-old daughter has sickle cell disease. Thank you both for being with me this evening.
Happy to be here.
So, Dr. Azar, we actually were talking about this before we began recording. This is not necessarily a cure, which I know a lot of outlets have been calling this a potential cure.
That's exactly right. And I think we prefer in the sickle cell community to think about this as a transformative therapy. And the reason why we want to make that distinction is because we want patients to understand that after they undergo this treatment, they still have sickle cell disease. They're still going to need follow-up with their hematologist. They're still going to need annual kidney and eye screening. And they're still going to be at risk of developing complications from their disease. The hope is that with this intervention, they will have far fewer complications.
So what does this new treatment do, actually?
Yes, so this treatment works to turn on fetal hemoglobin. It's the type of hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen around our bodies in our red blood cells, that we all utilized when we were first born. At around 6 months of age, our body flips a switch and turns on adult hemoglobin and turns off fetal hemoglobin. And in our sickle cell patients, that switch turns on sickle hemoglobin. This intervention doesn't do anything to combat the sickle hemoglobin, but it helps the body turn that switch back and turn on fetal hemoglobin once again.
So, Carissa, we talked about the price of these new treatments. What was your thought when you heard about this new treatment, this transformative treatment, but also the cost? The price tag is always the issue. What went through your mind?
It was exciting news because we've been waiting for this for quite a while. But at the same time, yeah, thinking about the cost and, from what I hear, it's not like the easiest procedure either to go through. The side effects, it's just a lot, and it's a lot to take in. It is very exciting, though, to hear that this is finally approved. But, the cost of it is an issue, and also all the stuff that comes along with it. I heard it's a pretty intense thing to go through. And me and Jaleesa were talking about it, and she's like a little worried about it. She wants to do it, but part of her is hesitant because she wants to make sure this is something that cures her, which we already heard that, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to cure you.
Dr. Azar, talk to me about that treatment process.
Yeah, so it is a lengthy process.
Yeah.
So this intervention still requires patients to undergo a bone marrow transplant. It does, however, allow them to be able to undergo what we call an auto-transplant, meaning they get their own stem cells back. From beginning to end, the process in the clinical trials really took 6 months or sometimes even longer. Patients come in, they have their stem cells taken and then sent to the lab to be modified, and then those cells are returned to them. They then undergo chemotherapy and undergo a bone marrow transplant.
Wow, so that is a lengthy process. And chemotherapy and the transplant probably have their own risks involved. Absolutely.
I think one of the most important concerns that patients are expressing is the fact that the chemotherapy we have to use makes patients infertile. And unfortunately, fertility preservation is not covered by insurance for patients living with sickle cell disease, the way that it's covered for patients with cancer.
It's interesting because on the one hand you have hope, but on the other hand, the treatment is so intense.
Absolutely. I mean, we are very hopeful, and I think one of the things that we're most excited about is that this has really kicked open the door in terms of placing society's attention on a disease that's been largely ignored, and we hope that we'll be able to fine-tune this and create newer and better ways to be able to do this in the coming years.
Carissa, talk to me a little bit about, you and your daughter, having to go through the process outside of this hope of a treatment where, getting bone marrow, getting blood transfusions and pain management and things like that.
Yeah, it's been, so Jaleesa gets exchanged blood transfusions every 3 to 4 weeks. So we're in the hospital all the time for that. It's not easy to do this every 3 to 4 weeks. When she goes in, she has a double port. They have to insert 2 very large needles into her chest, where they're, basically taking out her blood and exchanging it with another person's blood, a donor's blood. And then just being on so many different pain medicines. And sometimes the pain medicines, because she's been on it for so long, they just don't work for her. So we have to try a different type of thing to get through the pain. It's been hard. It's a lot of back and forth, and it hits us emotionally, mentally, financially, having to stop, not being able to work, to take her back and forth into the hospital, her staying in the hospital. It's a lot. And then I have other children, so it takes away time from the other kids too. This being approved is great news, but it's scary also for us.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, is the trade-off of potentially not having to do all of that worth some of the risks and side effects that we were talking about?
Yeah, we were thinking about it. We've been really deeply talking about it. And I guess, she said, I'm scared about the whole chemo. She's also said, hey, I want to have kids in the future. Am I going to be able to have kids? Me, I'm not working. I can't afford to have her eggs, put away for her for later on in life. I can't do that. I'm not working. I'm not working because she's disabled, because I'm always in the hospital with her. So it's a very touchy subject. And it, as much as it sounds like it's this great thing, it's also, again, my child has chronic sickle cell. So whatever is already wrong with her that happened because of the sickle cell, whatever, the kidneys, the liver, the so on, I don't believe gene therapy is going to fix that. Mm-hmm. So those things are already there. So that, not having a spleen, you're still going back and forth to the hospital. If there's a fever that, hits, it's a lot. But, it's still great news, because it's something that's showing that something is being done. Yeah. We're trying to get to there.
Well, Dr. Azar, this is one step. Do we think that then this could lead to treatments that are easier to manage and won't have these severe side effects?
Absolutely. And I think the companies that have delivered these products are already working on the next iterations, the future therapies. The dream would be gene therapy in a pill, to be able to have our patients take an oral medication, not have to worry about undergoing the bone marrow transplant part of all of this. I think that's coming, and I think it will come in the next few years.
Do you think the will is there and the funding to continue this trajectory?
I do. I mean, I think from a research standpoint, I think this has done amazing things for us, because it has allowed medical research to be able to recognize what an important and what a ripe environment sickle cell disease is for development of new treatments. But I think also, likewise, this treatment is going to lay bare some of the shortcomings that we have faced as a society, helping patients live with this disease. As Carissa was mentioning, patients struggle to be able to get to and from clinic. They struggle to be able to have housing and food security, child care. This intensity of this intervention is going to lay bare how few resources we have to be able to manage those things as it is.
I'm also thoughtful of what Carissa mentioned with the other damage that having sickle cell has done for the patient. This might help cure help with the sickle cell, but you still have these other issues.
That's exactly right. You know, I tell my patients what you walk into the transplant with, you're going to walk out with. If you already have chronic kidney disease or eye disease, this is a disease that touches every organ. So if you walk into the transplant having already accumulated complications, the gene therapy will not make those complications go away. The hope is that they will reduce the risk of future complications and reduce the pain, but they won't undo the damage that's already been done.
Well, we'll certainly have to wait and see. Dr. Azar, Carissa, Juarez, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.